because with everything that you said, I see, and it makes me understand the wickedness of Rockefeller, because that's exactly falls in line with his ideology, is to create this. I want to stop you from thinking. I want you to be focused on working, because when you think, you free yourself. You can process things and you can find your own way. I don't need you to be that way. You're of no use to me that way. I need you to be locked in on paying your mortgage. I need you to be locked in on getting education certificates for jobs that won't be there. I need you to be in that space and that mindset of attaining material wealth, but you can't eat it. So that's the problem or that's the, I don't want to say this word, but that's the brilliance of what he put together. Even in his death, it's still going on. That people are still following the same cookie cutter plan. I always think of the analogy of, you can pour concrete all over the world, cover up the earth, but eventually a blade of grass, as fragile as it is, will penetrate that concrete. So you can't cover it, but for so long.
Episode of 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. 360 Info Network is brought to you by the Cleveland Observer, the voice in the community. And today we are also brought to you by the Ohio Black Expo, which is in progress as we speak in what we are calling C-Bus now. We're not calling it Columbus anymore for obvious reasons. So down in C-Bus, Genoa Park, the Ohio Black Expo is in progress. And if you have not heard about it, you need to hear about it. Not only is it entertainment, but there is also an exercise in consciousness. Our brother Antonio is down in C-Bus right now. My suspicion is that he is probably investigating the Ohio Black Expo. He may join us at some point during the hour today. So with that, we want to welcome to our radio program our good friend and brother, Mbwebe Ishangi. He is the author of a couple of books, including 2048. I read that book back in February. I have been effusive about it, and I think if you have any interest in Afrofuturism, that is a book for you. It is a novel, but it is packed with insight about what's coming down the pike, but also what's going on right now. Also, he has written a book called From Railroads to Robots, and it is an insightful glance at the American economic system and how those moguls, those oligarchs, put everything on the map for them, and how we are suffering through not having the resources that they control. So we're looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have today. And our brother has a topic that he is going to share with us and a PowerPoint that he will also share. So if you're listening on the radio and you want to see what we're talking about, we highly encourage you to visit the YouTube channel. You can go to my YouTube channel. You can go to the 360 Info Network Facebook page. You can go to my Facebook page. You can also go to The Journey with Antonio and check us out on those various social media platforms. So with all that said, welcome to 360 Info Network, our good friend and brother.
Bless up, brother. Bless up. How you doing? Good, brother. Good to see you. Good to be back.
Good to have you back, and glad to be able to have this conversation. You know, Mbwebe, you are one of the few people that I can have conversations about with current cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and a lot of it. Yeah.
And currency is really something that we should all be plugged into, because literally it's what makes the world move around in terms of our lives and the things that we're able to accomplish. Our command of currency is what enables us to have success in life. So looking forward to having conversation with you about that. If you want, you can talk about what you would like to share with us today, but also let everybody know on the front end of things how they can connect with you and some of the things that you have going on right now.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to be back. Give thanks and salute to everyone that is tuning in, whether you're doing it live or down the road in the future, you're listening. It is a pleasure to be back in this space and, just being able to be in a realm where we can talk about things that are relevant, that I feel are relevant, that Brother Vince also believes that are relevant in the progression of our folk. There's a lot of stuff that I have coming down the pipe that I'm working on. And just as, with the times that we're in right now with all these inventions and all these new platforms and tech that so much we be in this space. So there's a few things that I wanted to go over to share with, but number one, I will say that without being redundant, but finances to me is always the core of everything, because once you have a control of your finances, then it enables you to do the other things in life. And it's kind of like that one big wall that's in our face. And so I'm always an advocate for learning about finances. I'm a financial therapist by trade, so I'm always looking to reintroduce us to how the functionality of money, and using money methodologies that have been shared by families, rich families for over 200 years, and that can now be implemented and practiced by ourselves, regardless of your color, regardless of your status, your monetary status. So to me, it's important about that. So one of the things that I'm working on that starts next month, which I'll also be sharing in the presentation today, is I started a generation graduation summer camp for young folk ages 14 to 25. The camp starts, there's two sessions. One starts June 8th through the 19th, and the other one is July 13th to the 24th. And basically, it's 5 weeks, 5 sessions over 2 weeks a period, and really introducing our youth to the functionalities of money before they get caught up, because a lot of us are these are things I wish I
Okay, looks like we're having a little technical difficulty on his end, but he's describing some workshops that he's going to be doing for young people coming up this summer in June and July. Um, I also would like to give you a little bit more insight on Brother Mbwebe as we wait for his signal to come back. His bio describes him as a scribe of many frequencies, a nationally recognized author, cultural strategist, and AI thought leader who turns audiences into movements. He has 35 plus years of bridging history, economics, and emerging technology. And he has a debut novel that we mentioned, 2048, that confronts the future head on. His works and talks don't just inform, they ignite. We've been rejoined by Brother Ishangi. So thankfully, we're able to get things back. We can't blame it on a Mercury retrograde, but something tells me that it must be lurking around the corner.
man, he's the things that happen, man. The things
Yeah,
that happen, and I don't want
yeah.
to blame it on nothing, and just let it be. Just continue with the flow. Just
Yes,
continue
and
with the flow.
that's what we shall do.
Yeah.
So I see that you have dropped something in our presentation mode. So if you would
Yeah.
like to proceed, please do.
Okay. Copy that. So yeah, today I want to really get into two topics that I think are relevant. As I was speaking about, I don't know how much you caught when before I got cut off, but I was speaking about the importance of finance and financing. Learning about money allows us to focus on the other things once you have your finances, to understand the game and can put your plan in place so that we can do the other things that we are really here to do. Money is just an obstacle, I believe, but it's something that we must address in order you to free yourself. So today I want to talk about measuring your wealth in days, not dollars. And then I have another piece that I've been working on that is really, I think, in conjunction with why I put out 2048. Uh huh.
Yeah, the
Oh, you
the
can't.
topic is Measure your wealth in days, not dollars. The
Yes,
audio cut out when you were announcing the title, so I just want to make sure everybody knows exactly what we're talking about today.
yes, yes. And hopefully my internet is gonna, because it never had any issues before, but until today. But anyway, so yeah, so today we're talking about how we are transcending and we are also trans-ending. We're gonna wake up, get out of this slumber that we have been, and they're continuing to put more sleep, opioids out there to make us fall even deeper into a sleep. So it's time for us to get really in alignment with our assignment. Um, I like to talk about a couple hors d'oeuvres before we get into the topic at hand. But like this, obviously being Memorial Day weekend, I just want to point some things out because I call them hollow days because they're really hollow. The information, there's a lot of things they're not uh, including, and it's some of those things we're celebrating things and not even knowing the real origin of these holidays. But basically, if you think about it, this is America's bicentennial and a half anniversary. And of its 250 years in existence, it's been at war for 93% of its existence. And so that means that since America's founding, roughly 20 years has been at peace. Every other year have been at war with somebody else. They also have roughly 400 military interventions since 1776. So when you think about this, how they can have bases, army bases, military bases all across the world, but there are no foreign military bases on American soil, which is interesting. I think to point out. Um, and half of those interventions have occurred after 1950. So they've ramped up the whole, pillage of wanting to take over and control everything. And over a quarter of them have been since 1991 with the post-Cold War ending. So we're seeing that America is a very violent country, as much as they talk about land of the free, home of the brave. But being that we have this holiday coming up called Memorial Day, a lot of us are honoring soldiers, but not understanding what the true origin of Memorial Day is. And it really evolves or originates in Charleston, South Carolina, back in 1865, on May 1st, to be exact, when it was created by Black folks who decided they wanted to honor Union soldiers who had got caught in the Civil War by the Confederates and died in prison. So this was your first dose of what Memorial Day was about. Again, originated by Black folk, co-opted by white folk, and where we basically pay homage to those who had fought for our victory, fought for our freedoms. And so this is something that I think is very important that we understand when you're going to celebrate something. Be in the habit of paying, doing the diligence and understanding, the history behind it before you actually co-sign it. All right. Um, Also, this is Boule History Month. May From May 1st to the 31st, we find that every full 3,000 rostered member of Sigma Pi Phi, aka the Boule, rereads their history book. This is an organization that is older than a lot of our organizations. We're talking about NAACP, Urban League, Jack and Jill, etc. And those are actually children of this organization. And if you are not familiar with the Boule, you need to get familiar with organizations like the Cecil Rhodes and Laura Rothschild's Secret Circles. You have you also have Skull and Bones, you have the Illuminati, and things of that nature. So we are familiar with those. But then when you look at the Boule, you find that this is the Black organization of men who decided they wanted to create an organization that was exactly like or based on the tenets of Skull and Bones. And if you know anything about Skull and Bones is actually a global white supremacist organization, and it beholds a lot of our uh, I would say enemies of our people that have been responsible for the co-op or the covert takeover of Africa and its resources, including us as a people. So this being Boule History Month, I always resurrect this book. I wrote this book and released it in 2018. But I've been writing about the Boule for nearly 30 years, so that we know that we have organizations that some of us look up to. I know there was just recently a PBS put out a documentary on W.B. Du Bois. So there's information about our story, but then there's the story behind the story they're not telling us about, and why Black people have been delayed in our liberation, and what role have certain Blacks played in that delay. That's the biggest part. So this is where you find the history of looking at one like a Steve Coakley, who really was the one that exposed the Boule back in the 1990s. And after attending several of his lectures and befriending him for a little bit, I started writing about it myself, being in the fraternity and giving my perspective on it. And I realized that this story needs to be told because this is the history they don't want you to know. So I offer you to check this book out, Who Was the Boule? There's a QR code. If you're interested, you can go to mbwebeishangi.com or theghettotimes.com to check it out. Okay. The other thing I was speaking about was the financial ed summer camp that I'm doing for youth ages 14 to 25. This is a generation graduation boot camp where basically youth will learn about finances because, again, giving them a leg up on what, some of the things that we haven't been told. For once, one of the things is 9 out of 10 Black students age 18 and up have zero net worth, no credit, nor a checking account. And if they do have a savings account, it's less than 5% have more than 1,000. The majority are not taught how to manage money to buy a car, home, nor how to pay for college, other than through loans, which means they'll be paying more and longer, delaying their ability to create. So yeah, that's what I want to expose our kids to and youth folks, youth too, because we're not being given a chance to even understand how things work before we even get started. So this is that camp that's going to enable to do that. I'm going to speak about a little bit more of that in a minute. I also have some audiobooks that are available from the books that I've written. Actually have, I just put out 2048 as an audiobook that's available now. Also, we have From Railroads to Robots that is available, A Pot to Piss In, Who is the Boule, Analytical, these things, so that, if you don't have time to turn the pages, you can press play and just enjoy and learn from there as well. So getting into what I want to speak about today is really about how do you want to be remembered? And, we honor our loved ones, especially, again, this being Memorial Day. We think about, some of our family that have died in wars or things of that nature. And we honor those who have lived. But soon, we also will become ancestors. Right? So how do you want to be remembered by your bloodline is the question. What is your contribution? And it's more than about finances. It's about what you did while you were here and what you left for those to pick up on. I think that that's something that a lot of us, we don't think about until it's kind of too late, right? What is your contribution, right? So I want to talk about first the financial portion of it, measuring your wealth in days and not dollars, okay? So let's just admit that we are in a structural deficit because basically inflation is eating our paycheck after paycheck, because the dollar value is going down. Over 40% of Americans report feeling financially unhealthy. Okay, that's 4 out of 10, and it's really probably even more than that. But nearly half, 69% of people are explicitly saying their salaries simply are not keeping pace with inflation. And let's think about this. And since President Trump got in office again, the grocery bill, especially this year, has gone up 20%. Utilities have gone up 15%. But if you're lucky to get an annual raise, and that's if you're lucky, it's roughly 3%. So that 3% is not measuring up to the inflation growing in these T-bills and grocery bills and costs of living. So you literally are losing money while working the exact same number of hours, right? And they'll add in a 1% cost of living, but things are going up much more than 1%, right? But this is the rat race psychosis. Think about this, especially for our youth. At age 18, banks will let you commit to $200,000 in student loans, but won't give you a $20,000 business loan, right? So think about that. We're not taught to be free. We're taught to be useful. And that's what Rockefeller wanted to do. He said, I want a nation of thinkers. I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. So we'll finance you to go to school. And, we're big on getting education. But what do you do once you get out of school? You got to find some place that will pay you to pay off that education that you took on a loan, because we're not, silver spoon kids. We actually have to take loans out to go to school, right? We don't have endowments that we're inheriting. So we're signing up in a deficit before we even begin our adult lives. And then when you get out of college, you have to spend majority of your adult life trying to pay off that college loan, much less trying to find a job that'll pay to allow you to live your standard ways of living. So this is how we get caught up into, we dig ourselves in this trench, and people just call it adulting. This is what everybody does. So not everybody. And that's the thing, is that once we understand that other folks have done other ways, then that's how we can stop repeating this cycle. This is why I have that generation graduation boot camp that I spoke of, because our youth need to have a leg up so we can break this generational curse. Right. So at the core of it, I feel like we're budgeting wrong. And I think the one thing that, if we were all taught this, I call it the financial endurance number. If we were taught what a financial endurance number is, I think that we would be in better spaces. And because we're teaching it now, I project us to be in better spaces 3 months to, as little as 3 months from now, simply by implementing something simple as this. We're conditioned to measure our wealth purely in terms of a dollar amount, when an FEN is a measure of time, not money. It's not about how much money you make, it's how much you have left over for after your lifestyles are taken care of, your expenses. So this FEN is the exact mathematical number of days that you can maintain your current standard of living without receiving another paycheck before you run out of money. Okay, so your financial endurance number, how long can you make your money last before it runs out, right? So let me give you an example. The total balance of your checking and savings account, let's just say it's $3,000. So you're going to calculate all of your expenses. I'm talking about your car note, your insurance, your gym membership, your food bill, your mortgage, anything that comes out regularly every month. Let's just say that you're paying it on a regular month, and it has a dollar fixed dollar, roughly a fixed dollar amount, right? Including going out and hanging out, right? If you do that, go to the club every other week or something, or get your hair done or your nails done. Those are expenses that you're paying every month. So let's just say if you break that number down into 30 days, that, and I'm lowballing it, is that it costs you about $100 a day just to exist, right? So $100 you're spending every day to exist, right? When you break the numbers down. So that means if you got $3,000 in the savings and checking and you're spending $100, that means your FEN is only 30 days. Okay, that means you can only use that $3,000. You're spending roughly $100 a day. So that means you got, within 30 days, you're going to have blown through that $3,000. So this is what your actual wealth is. So the question is, what if you were to get laid off suddenly and you had just those $3,000 in your account? Well, that means that unless you find another form of income, after the 30th day, if you're living by the same lifestyle, you're going to have nothing. So you need to actually figure out, how can I find another means of income to get through my next 30 days? So what if it's even more than that? What if your FEN is 14 days? Or what if it's 30 days, or is it 6 months? We don't know these things because we've never done the mathematics equations behind it. And it really isn't hard to do. But measuring wealth strictly in time exposes the extreme fragility of relying solely on a high salary. What if you were making $200,000 a year, right? Well, if you were making $200,000 a year, but you have a massive mortgage, you got crazy cars and incredible high monthly expenses, their FEN might just be 12 days, depending on what they're making a month and opposed to what they're spending. So despite even a huge salary, they are highly financially vulnerable if they don't have this FEN in order in place. This is how we get deeply entrenched in the rat race, because we don't know exactly, we might know what we're bringing in, but don't know exactly what's going out. And we haven't done the ration between the two. So in contrast, if you did know these things, you could look at someone making much far less, like $50,000 a year, and they live completely debt-free. They have highly controlled expenses, and they built some of the modest savings. So their FEN might be 150 days. So really, again, it's about understanding, how do you measure your time not how much you make, but your time in days and how you can live off of what you have saved. These are things that I teach in my crypto woke uh, financial sustainability movement, where I have courses on teaching us things of this nature. So if you are interested in learning more about this, feel free to log on at cryptowokemovement.com, and I'd be happy to be of service on helping you get to learning how to live off your savings and investments. All right. So now this is really the thing that I want to talk about this today is that we are in a space where there's so much going on that we're becoming the deer in the headlights, and we're just looking at headlights and we just don't know what to do. We're in pause mode. We don't know how to move because it's just so much going on. We don't know which way to turn, which way to work. What should I be learning now? I just learned this, now it's irrelevant. All these things we're being purposely inundated, and we are in the information age. So as we're in the information age, understand too, all information is good information. Sometimes it's too much information creates stagnation. And I think that's where we're at a space right now where we have just too much information and folks aren't knowing what direction to go with it. Right. So I want to bring up this point that I learned from a movie not too long ago, but it was a quote by Michael Hopf. And he said that hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. So I added in there that this is a cyclical evolution of a lesson unlearned. We're going through this psychosis, this cyclical psychosis, as we speak, because right now things are getting hard. But the beautiful thing about when you're in hard times is there are some folks that will stand up and create strong men. And I will also put in there women, because we absolutely need our sisters just as much as we are needed. So in those hard times, we're creating strong men. And then also those strong men are going to create the good times we're looking for. But the problem is when things get good and things are going well, we take our foot off the gas, and then we start to relish in the good times, and that creates weakness. And in that weakness, right around the corner is going to be more hard times. So I feel like we're in this cyclical spiral thing here. And at this point, I think we're at the hard times creating strong women and men, because things are coming and we're, again, being inundated, and not everybody's going to make it. And it's your decision on whether you choose to, because if you choose to allow them to give you what they want to give you, you've already counted yourself out. So it's a point of what type of person do you see yourself as, and then aligning yourself with other folks that are having the same mentality. Because there is a fight going on. History is always written by the winners, right? Napoleon is known infamously for saying, "What is history but a fable agreed upon?" So we must become the tellers of our story, else it will be written or calibrated by someone, and now something else like AI, right? So we must become familiar with AI or be left with whatever they will give you. That is if there's anything to give. So we must, as much as we don't want to learn about this, or we don't want to get into coding, or we don't want to, learn about Google AI and Claude and OpenClaw and all these new things that are coming out. If we are not familiar, think about this. In the 70s and 80s, computers were for nerds, right? Now we all carry a computer and that cell phone. So it's going to be part of your life. The question is, are you going to just be as a user, or are you going to be familiar with how it operates and be even to the point of a developer where you can create it to work for you opposed to you working for it? And they're hoping that you become just that user, that stagnant user, obedient and complicit. So the real issues is not race, this digital divide. It's positioning in the digital economy. And positioning comes down to early exposure, environment, education systems, and financial conditions. And when we talk about our people, which I call people, POADIS, or people of African descent in the United States, we have slightly lower averages, largely due to access gaps not capability. It's not that we're stupid. We're just not getting exposed to these things. And so with exposure, we'll excel. So, and exposure is based upon our interest. So this digital divide, Powata's households are less likely to have home computers, reliable broadband. That gap directly impacts skill development early in life. That alone. Plus the education and pipeline effects. So Asians are more represented in STEM degrees and tech career pipelines. The economic layer also we have with device ownership, software exposure, coding, and advanced skills. A lot of us are, when I look at our youth, I mean, they're making reels and making video, but they're not developing apps. We're not in that space. So if we were in that space, we would have more wealth. If we have more wealth and intelligence, then we could have a better say on what the trajectory of our lives are going to be. But I understand this, again, this cycle that we're going through that is all propelled by us, what's called a secular. And Strauss-Howe generational theory brought that up about big events in history happening in cycles based on groups of people called generational archetypes. So each generation, we have a new period that lasts about 21 years. And with that, we find new things coming on the scene, new different social, political, and economic changes. Okay. And these periods are part of an even bigger cycle known as a saculum, which usually lasts around 85 to 100 years. So when I think about roughly 85 to 100 years ago, this is why I wrote my book, From Railroads to Robots, because I systemically went down the timeline of the last 100 years where Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Carnegie created the second industrial revolution, where we had the emerge of oil, railroads, and steel, and then we had J.P. Morgan with banking. And I then compared them to the current oligarchs that we have in the making, which is your Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, etc., where they are now with the same narcissistic ideology of thinking they know what's best for the world, that they are now making decisions, and their decisions are eugenic based. They're not thinking about us. And even with themselves, they call themselves, useless cattle. So they want to eliminate majority of the people on the planet through various measures, but their focus is on keeping melanated people either in check or eliminating altogether. Right. And we're not in these discussions. We're not even having discussions to combat it because we're too busy, TikToking and shucking and jiving. So let's talk about this industrial revolution, because when you look at history is so important. Asa Hilliard has always talked about history. If you want to study it, you want to know it, you got to do it in chronological order. You got to have dates. When you have dates, then you can understand where were we in this space, right? So when we think about this, we've gone through what's now 4 revolutions with industry. The first one's happening in 1765 with the mechanization. We had the steam engine, the cotton gin, etc. Then we had 1870s. We had the second revolution where we started getting mass production. We had, the emerge of electricity, and then we started bringing in oil. And then we have the third with automated production in 1969, roughly. Electronics started coming on the scene, and today we're in new technologies, right? So we understand also that in Industry 3.0, or the third revolution, industrial revolution, is the information age when that came on the scene. And many fail to realize or recognize that AI cannot exist without information, or the IA, information age. And IA itself echoes a deeper origin, an older AI, not artificial intelligence, but ancestral intelligence, the first form of knowledge, wisdom, and data passed through generations. So Industry 4.0 started in 2011. And since then, we've seen rapid tech advances in the 21st century, including artificial intelligence, robotics, the cloud, and the Internet of Things, biotech, and quantum computing, blurring lines between the physical, digital, and biological worlds. Things that we saw in the movies in the 90s, we're now seeing today. And I'm still amazed by that. But this is called that digital age 3.0. When we talk about started in 1947. If you go back and think about it, if you're old enough, you can remember when these things came on the scene. We started seeing core technologies, transistors and microprocessors, digital computers, fiber optic communications, and the web. We also saw an economic shift where values moved from manufacture of physical goods towards information, data, software, and knowledge-based services. This was called the knowledge economy. And then we had communication changes where we had near instant and global exchange of digital info and massive scaling like email. We don't have to use snail mail anymore. When you write a letter, it would take 2 weeks at least to get a full correspondence. I send a letter, it takes a week to get there, and then you send it back to me, it takes another week. So that's about 2 weeks to just have one form of exchange. Where the internet, if you put an email, it goes instantly, as we know. But there was a time before that we had to wait, and some of us remember those days. Social impacts, new forms of work remotely, platform work, changes in education and civic participation, and reshaped media entertainment landscapes. So we started seeing now that we were becoming more social, a broader reach. I can now talk to people in Africa. I don't have to just be confined to in my city or my neighborhood. But some of the challenges are that there's information overload and also attention scarcity. We've also seen an array of misinformation, privacy and data control issues, digital inequality, and concentration of power in major tech platforms. So there's been the good and there's the bad. And you start to see how we are becoming almost zombie-like, where everybody's fixated on their device, their phone, looking down and not looking at each other. And they realize they've monetized this data. Data is the new oil. China is the new Saudi Arabia. And all this was done in just one generation. That's secular I'm speaking about. All this was done in just a 20 to 40 year, maybe possibly, generation to make all this change, to put us into this psychosis, to make information the primary economic resource and a factor of production. Institutions, politics, business models, and daily life are restructured around data flows and connectivity. We get on our phone as soon as we get up and we get information, or we'll contribute information, good or bad, more bad than good. There's ongoing technological advances, AI, the Internet of Things, biotechnology continue to push the era into new phases, raising both opportunities as well as ethical regulatory questions. This is where I feel like we are responsible for what's happening. If we are upon completion of the current saculum, it is apparent there's an opening of change on the horizon. We must do so with the original AI in mind, that being ancestral intelligence. Not only are we older than AI, we are the original AI. Now is the time to study up on our ancient oral and written histories, for it may actually save us. When you think about it, message is embedded in memory, and it serves as a memoir that bonds us through time. So understanding, knowing our story is very important, because guess what? AI is learning our story, but the question is, who is it learning from? So let's talk about this real quick. Artificial intelligence is when computers or machines are designed to think and learn like humans, allowing them to do things such as recognize speech and make decisions or even play games. It's trained to notice patterns, make predictions, and get better over time by learning from examples instead of following step-by-step instructions like traditional algorithms do. And it's like giving a computer a brain so that it can help us with tasks or find information more easily. All right. So what is an LLM? You might have heard that term, and if you're not, we're going to get familiar right now, and how that ties into the need for us to be more active in writing. An LLM is basically trained on gigantic amounts of text, books, websites, code bases, threads, and internet articles. And basically, it's like a virtual encyclopedia, right? So whenever you put in a prompt, or even before prompts, when you go into Google and do a search, it's searching what? Where is it getting this information from? It's scanning the internet to try to bring you a result of what you're searching for. So basically, they don't think like humans, but what they're doing is predicting word by word, pixel by pixel, what's most likely to come next in response to a prompt. And we're seeing it helping us, but we're actually helping it because we're teaching it. And it's called deep learning. So all of these apps you're seeing, Gemini, Grok, Copilot, Claude, Meta AI, ChatGPT, like everyone's speaking about it, using to make flyers and you know all these little things that they're using it for. All the while, we are teaching these LLMs about who we are. So it's doing a deep learning about us, but we're not learning about it. So what is deep learning? Deep learning works by using artificial neural networks that attempt to replicate the way biological neurons operate in the brain. So the internet, artificial intelligence, is trying to be us artificially. Okay, these networks are composed of layers and an input layer that receives the data, and then there's one or more hidden layers that processes it, and an output layer that produces the result. So as data passes through these layers, the network learns to identify patterns, relationships, and structures. So it's kind of like the way they teach LLMs is they'll give you a bunch of barrages of, let's just say, dogs. They won't say it's a dog though, but they'll show you all different kinds of dogs. So as it starts to see all these images of dogs, it starts to realize, okay, I recognize what that is, and then they tell you it's a dog. So now when someone puts in a prompt, show me a picture of a dog, it pulls back from all those imageries that it's seen, and now it can recognize it and even create one. It can merge some of the things it's seen and maybe put spots on it or some of that nature, because now it's seen so many variations. So this is how we are teaching. It's like teaching a child a language is what we're doing artificially. But what's next is what we should be really concerned about. AGI, artificial general intelligence. It's a type of AI that can understand, learn, and apply knowledge across different tasks, much like a human can. And it means a machine could potentially do anything a human can do. It's expected for AGI to be on the scene between 2030 and 2050. So the next 3.5 years is going to be dramatically different than what is today. And it's already, this today is different from last year. So it's going to get dramatically different over these next few years. The next one is ASI, artificial superintelligence, which goes beyond that. It's when AI becomes much smarter than the best human minds in every area, including creativity, problem solving, and emotional intelligence. Essentially, it's an AI that surpasses human abilities entirely, and it's expected to be on the scene around 2040 to 2099. Now, these are human expectations or predictions, but as AI develops its conscience, it could be tomorrow. We really can't say, and we really won't know until it does it. I know you want to go on a break, brother. Do you want to do that?
Yes, we'll need to step away just for a few moments and come back to the action. If you're just joining us, this is 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Our guest is Mbwebe Ishangi. He is an author, he's an activist, he is a griot, he is a scribe, he is many things. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the second hour of 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490. But until then, stay with us, and we will be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit cleobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
Also want to invite you to travel down to C-Bus, the city formerly known as Columbus, and check out the Ohio Black Expo. It is in progress right now. We're going to return to 360 Info Network with our guest, Mwebe Ishangi. He is doing a great presentation, and I encourage you, if you're listening on the radio, you can go to the YouTube channel. You can go to my YouTube channel. You can go to the 360 Info Network Facebook page, where this broadcast will be archived, and you can see a replay of this broadcast today. A great presentation, and let us continue, Brother Mwebe.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, this is definitely for me is I mean, is it before I go in? Is there any points? I know I've been talking, so I don't. I want to basically, if there's anything you wanted to comment on or have a point on, I'm open to that as well, brother.
Yes.
I know I can run my mouth. So
Yeah. When you started the presentation, you were talking about the 250-year cycles, and we are at 2026, which is 250 years away from 1776. It's also said that civilizations have periods of 250 years. So it seems as though the time for America is up. And you talked about some other things about those four stages, where what happens when you have weak men. And it seems like we might be in that phase right now. So before we go to the second hour, let's just talk about the rise and fall of civilizations and where the United States is with respect to that 250-year cycle.
Wow. Yeah, that's why history is so important. I mean, we really are caught in the present of thinking, well, one, people think that civilization is only 2026 years old, which is asinine. Like, the planet is much more older. The species itself were much more older than 2,000 years. And then you have the audacity to create BC, before Christian era, and then you count backwards, which doesn't make sense, because how far back do you want to go? You know what I'm saying? But that's the part where we think about how, when you start to question everything, you start to realize that there's a control mechanism behind it. That's the biggest part that I'm understanding and learning today, is that it's not educating you to know, it's educating to program you. And they're feeding you what they want you to know. So when we think about timelines, as I mentioned about what Asa Hilliard said, and studying it in chronological order, you start to realize that what are they omitting? What part are they not including in our story? Why aren't they speaking about the Nile Valley and Kush? Why aren't they speaking about where were they during that period? Were they even around? These are conversations that aren't happening, because if we start to do this digging, we start to do this research and go down this rabbit hole, we'll find just how irrelevant they are. And we'll actually see the game that they've been playing. We'll start to see that this Wizard of Oz is really this small, puny white man that's been sitting behind this curtain, projecting themselves as this omnipotent power, opposed to realizing that we have all been, bamboozled, right? But yeah, when we talk about the timeline, I absolutely believe that we're at that part where we're in a very weak stage. There's a lot of weak men, but in this backing up in the corner phase, we are going to be create those that will survive. Will be the strong women and men. Those that survive. There will be casualties. I'm not prophesizing this. I hope that it isn't that way, but because people aren't wired to do for self, they're going to be an automatic casualty.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's relevant, because we're talking about money and we're talking about wealth not being necessarily the currency itself, but the time. We're in a place where we're seeing the end of one system and the beginning of a new system, and that new system is a new financial economic system. And that's one of the reasons that this conversation is so important, because most of us have no idea of how money works. We don't fully comprehend the importance of understanding the Federal Reserve System. We don't know anything about the US dollar being the world reserve trading currency. We know none of those things.
Right.
We, as you pointed out in the presentation, We hope that we get 3% a year, but we're living in an age where inflation is actually 10, 20%. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, just think about it, brother Mbwebe. About a month and a half ago, gas went from 250 a gallon to 350 a gallon, and then $5 a gallon, and now $6 a gallon. And you're still stuck with what you get paid every week.
Right.
How do you, how can you ever get ahead? And they're consciously aware of this, and they're using that paradigm to maintain control of us. They
Mhm.
control us through energy, they control us through the food, they
Yep.
control us through the media, they control us through education and religion, all those things. And unless we have a certain level of conscious awareness of how we can manage our realities, then we're just subject to their control, and we have absolutely no sovereignty whatsoever. We got
Wow.
about a minute, and we're going to make a transition to the next phase.
Okay. And yeah, I would just say that too, that is what we're looking at here is folks aren't, because we're not aware of it, it allows them to tighten the noose whenever they choose and get as much juice out of that wet rag of us, as possible. They're squeezing every morsel out of us because we are just not informed. And also we're not informed of our power. Because really, if you want to get gas to go back down, stop buying gas. If people would organize, but again, we're in that rat race psychosis. We got to go to work. I got to pay bills. I gotta, opposed to, you know what? Collectively, if we all stopped, then our demands could be on the table. And I
Yes,
bring back the Alabama bus boycott as an example.
right. Yeah, the importance of history, the importance of remembering, most importantly, us remembering who we are, because when we know who we are, there's nothing that they can do to hold us down. That's the real key, the
Mhm.
remembering who we are. We're going to make a transition to our online platform, so you can go to my YouTube channel, you can go to the Journey with Antonio, you can go to 360 Info Network, its Facebook page, and you go to my Facebook page, and you can pick up the continuation of this broadcast. I just want to send a special shout out to our third man in the studio on Rockside Road, our brother Tone Harley, holding it down for us in the studio, making this broadcast possible. We sincerely appreciate what he does for us, and we appreciate you for listening. Don't forget, when you go to YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, share. Folks need to know what we're talking about today. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace, y'all. All right, 12 o'clock noon, right here on YouTube and Facebook. We have our brother, the scholar, the griot, the scribe, Substack, all kinds of websites. He's
Yeah, man.
published at least, what is it, up to 10 books now, bruh?
Well, I have done 8. I got 3 in the pipe.
3 in the pipe. So
Mhm.
very busy, very prolific, and dispensing wisdom today. And we're talking about money. If you could restate the title of your presentation, let's continue with the presentation. And also to my friend, large language model. That's what LLM stands for. And we've been talking about that, and we'll continue that discussion. So if you would like to resurrect your presentation,
Okay.
you
Yes,
can
I
do
will.
that.
All right. And so, yeah, what we're speaking about today's presentation is measure your wealth in days, not dollars. And then we're in the portion now where we're speaking about the information age needs artificial intelligence, which evolves from ancestral intelligence. So we're talking about AI, y'all. And I know that AI is becoming a buzzword, which is a good thing, but it's also being from a consumer perspective, learning this code or knowing it can do this for you, it can do that for you. It's what it can do for you, right? It's not, it's so we're being shopped as consumers opposed to what is AI really? What is the underlying foundation of what AI is? And we're about to get into what the projection is because as we thinking that it's helping us, actually AI is learning us. And so should we be learning it. So that's what this is really about. So I was speaking about before our break about the next levels of AI, which is AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is on the scene to projected to be around 2030, as early as 2030. And then we have artificial superintelligence, which is basically where AI can do that and then some in comparison to humans. So and that's supposed to come around 2040. So that beckons the question, if AI is doing everything, then what am I doing? Now, there are some people that say, well, that's great. I don't have to work. And I could do the other things that I'm focused on. But the one thing that we're not realizing is if AI removes your ability to take care of yourself, because we don't work because we want to work. We work because we have to work. In essence, even though someone that loves their job, if they could just do nothing, they would probably choose to do that or do the things they really want to focus on doing. So we're going to work to pay the bills, to keep a roof over our head, to put clothing on our back, to be able to pay and live a somewhat decent life. That is all affixed to that income. So if AI is now taking away those possibilities of income, then what else is there for you to do? You have to find other means to put food in your belly, to pay for the land you're living on, to secure yourself, right? So if you don't have these things in place, then, and which the majority don't, because even when you have a mortgage, you don't own the house. It takes 30 years to pay that house off. So it's not until that last payment do you own it. You could be in your 29th year and 51st week. But if you're 90 days late, they will take everything from you. So the question is, how do we sustain ourselves, especially with AI coming to change the labor force? So these are things that we should be having discussions about. And I'm going to speak about that in a sec. Actually, right here. So this leads to the fact of job insecurity. There's estimated that automation could lead to 25 million jobs lost globally over the next 5 years, particularly in sectors of manufacturing, retail, and transportation. Now, if you're a coder, you might have a chance. Even if you're a doctor or a judge, it isn't just blue collar, it's also white collar. We're having teachers being replaced, physicians being replaced. So no one is is untouched. And the thing that we're realizing is that businesses are opting for artificial intelligence and automation opposed to workers. Why? Well, if you're a business owner and you want to be in profit, which is the reason why you're in business, then it behooves you to cut your costs. What's the largest cost you have? Human labor. You have to pay for insurance. You have to pay for vacation. You have to pay for the salary. Salary increases despite whether you are having profit or not, or you go out of business, right? You need to have workers. Well, with robots, with automation, you can basically have these things work 24/7. Robotics don't say, hey, I got to go use the restroom, or I don't feel good today, I'm going to call off sick, or I need a vacation, or, I need these, or I need these personal things. No, they'll work until they break. And when they break, you put another one in its place. It's a machine, right? But here's the thing. This is where I draw the question about the economy, because although these businesses will be profitable as far as, well, I won't say profitable, they'll have less expenses with less human labor, they still need to make profit, and that's from consumerism. So if you don't have a job, then you don't have spending power. If you don't have spending power, there's no consumerism. So how does a business remain profitable if they have a product that no one buys? So this is where we're seeing what's happening is these are discussions that are happening behind closed doors that we're not a part of. So they're bringing up the idea of UBI, universal basic income. And I pit it against sustainable sovereignty, because basically UBI is going to be that stipend, be it monthly, weekly, biweekly. I don't know how they would do it, but they would give people money because robots aren't going to Disneyland. Robots aren't getting on the plane to fly to Chicago. Robots aren't going to the Super Bowl. Robots aren't playing. Well, they will be playing football in a minute. But the point is that, entertainment, consumerism is based on materialism, and robots are the material itself. So yeah, we may buy robots, but at some point we still want to go on a vacation. We still want to buy, we still want to go to cookouts. We still want to do things that humans do, and that costs money. So this UBI is bringing into the forefront of, well, we will give you money. This is what Elon Musk is talking about. Even A couple of presidential candidates talked about this in the last campaign run of creating. Even Martin Luther King talked about UBI, right? Of equality, economic equality, of giving everyone a check. But trust, it's not going to be six figures. And even if it's six figures with inflation, it'll be more like four figures. The deflation of the dollar, the way it is. But the point, unless we move into another currency, which that is happening. But the point is that there is this influx, this turmoil that I haven't seen a resolution yet, but I'm sure they're heavily working on it, probably already having it, just going to drip it out at a point of a time, a little bit at a time. But UBI is the so-called solution, or what they're going to give us. This is what their resolution is to your loss of jobs. We'll give you money. But this money can also be programmable. So there's other parts to this thing. It isn't nothing. We have to be under the guise of realizing that anything that's given to you is not to benefit you, it's to benefit them. So if you do get UBI, they're talking about, with us moving over to crypto, that we're going to have programmable money, which means that it has a time affixed to it. It has a jurisdiction fixed to it. I could be in New York and I want to fly to San Francisco and I have the money, but they're like, no, your money's not good here. So you can't go to you have to find another, you have to, you're confined if this is your only source to pay for to get to San Francisco. So we have 15-minute cities that are being built to keep everything in you confined so that you won't be traveling to confine you. And I'm not being David Downer here to make you feel afraid of what's happening, but I want you to understand what's happening, that we must become more informed about what's happening. Go ahead, brother.
And I think too, some of this is kind of illogical. I mean, you pointed out the fact that it's all about profit for companies, and this is the greatest consumer civilization on the face of the planet. But this is happening against an agenda of depopulation.
Right.
And as you were speaking, I was thinking, well, if you're eliminating population, then you're eliminating consumers and you're eliminating profits at the same time. That doesn't make sense, brother.
You know what the funny thing is I've been thinking about? Again, I'm thinking about the Wizard of Oz. This is all an illusion. When they get you to think the world is ending, then you're not thinking about the world extending. You're in fear. You're in influx. So I can control you. So I thought about this. I thought, if we troglodyte so much and they want to get rid of us, but what would they do if we were gone? Like, they have this love-hate relationship with us. They couldn't function without us, but they want to be able to control us. So I look at it like this. If you, as you mentioned, if you eliminate so many people, you're eliminating profit in your pockets. But if I have you thinking the sky is falling and you're too busy in fear and influx about what can potentially happen, all the while it can never happen. Think about this. We have all these nuke bombs and they talk about, oh, President Trump could, with his mental scarcity, he has the war codes and he could send off start a nuclear war. Well, the thing is, we live in a globe. So even if you shot something over to the Soviet or wherever you shot it over to, eventually it will come back this way. And so if it's something that is eliminating, lives as far as the air quality, it's going to get over here. Okay, they want to go under bunkers and live underground for whatever. We've seen the movies, Paradise is one of them. And they're living underground where everybody else is dying above ground. But you're also changing your way of life. If you do something that catastrophic, Wall Street goes down, the economy stops. That means your profit stops. Do you really want to do that? Do you really want to stop making the money you've been making and controlling the way you've been controlling? I don't see that. But we'll put the illusion out that doomsday is upon us so that you won't be in proactive mode. You'll be in reactive mode, waiting for something that probably never comes, like Jesus.
Yes. Well, and two, this whole notion of the end of the world, that really foretells the beginning of another world.
Facts.
And so if we focus so much on things coming to an end and we don't look forward to the new beginning, then we
Yeah.
miss out on a reality that we could build for ourselves that exists without the level of control that they want to put on us. You know, we talk about the control of digital currency, and
Mhm.
we look at this idea that, well, you know, it'll have an expiration date, you can't use it to spend on this or that. But the reality is that we live in a world right now where if they want to freeze your assets, they can do that.
Absolutely.
You know, it's already happening. So if we live in the fear of what could happen and we don't deal with the reality of what's already here, then we remain in a trap that keeps us in a fear-based reality, survival mentality, and no progress on our part because we don't exercise our power to create the sovereignty that allows us that sustainability that you mentioned.
Yes.
Sustainable sovereignty. That's
Yes.
really an idea that we must get to in order for us to live the lives that we deserve to live, and not the lives that they want to construct for us to keep us in a 15-minute city wearing some goggles if we want to see Phnom Penh or you know,
Right.
Chichen Itza or
Mhm.
the Giza Plateau or whatever, that we go to these portals, these energy centers on the
Mhm.
world that once again we have no knowledge of. As a matter of fact, we don't even understand our own relationship. Each one of us is a micro of the macro. Each one of us
Mhm.
is a universe existing in a greater universe. We're all
Mhm.
like cells in this magnificent organism. We're batteries, we're electronic beings, we're divine beings, we're all these things that
Right.
we don't know because we've been minimized to being a minority, being a
Yes.
slave to wages, being, you know, someone who's waiting for a UBI deposit to show up in our virtual wallet. You know, all these things that they're creating for us to maintain our reality in a way that benefits them. I had to interject that. It just
It's
does not make sense.
and it's such a vital point to make. The point you made is so vital because with everything that you said, I see, and it makes me understand the wickedness of Rockefeller, because that's exactly falls in line with his ideology, is to create this. I want to stop you from thinking. I want you to be focused on working. I don't want you to, because when you think, you free yourself. You can process things and you can find your own way. I don't need you to be that way. You're of no use to me that way. I need you to be locked in on paying your mortgage. I need you to be locked in on getting education certificates for jobs that won't be there. I need you to be in that space and that mindset of attaining material wealth, but you can't eat it. So that's the problem or that's the, I don't want to say this word, but that's the brilliance of what he put together. It's effectively it's been, even in his death, it's still going on. That people are still following the same cookie cutter plan, and very few people. Now, there have been people that have tried to break away from it, but I do love the fact, and that's why when I'm speaking about next, it falls in there, that I always think of the analogy of you can pour concrete all over the world and try to cover up the earth, but eventually a blade of grass, as fragile as it is, will penetrate that concrete. So you can't cover it but for so long. And I feel like this is the realm where we are creating these strong women and men, because we're being backed into, not into a corner, we're in the corner. We are the corner. There's no more movement. And so we're going to start pushing back. We're going to start thinking. And if it means there's two separate worlds, so be it. You can be on grid. We're learning about glamping. We know how to live off grid if we want to. You know what I mean? We don't have to be tied to the municipal to have power. So these are the things that we need to start thinking about. And the biggest part of it is being in spaces where other people share those ideologies. So you're not by yourself and isolated thinking you're going crazy. You know what I mean?
Just real quick before you
Mm-hmm.
jump back in,
Yeah.
and this is a rabbit hole that we haven't traversed. But do you really think that we gonna set up camp on Mars?
Well, I'm seeing more. I'm questioning Apollo. I'm questioning the moon. So I'm like, can y'all even get to the moon? Like first, you know what I mean? Again, quote unquote, right? Can you even prove that? Because we're seeing all this footage, and I don't know if it's deep fake video or whatever. But here's the thing about the fixation of wanting to leave this planet is I think it's the FOMO thing of making people believe that this plays into the fact, oh, they're ready to desert the earth, they're ready to leave. I'm like, yo, leave. If you want to go to Mars, go to Mars. But I think that we shouldn't think of it as, or if they're leaving, that they're leaving because Earth is doomed. Because that's giving them the control. So I think rather than me get caught up into wanting to know or wanting to even go to Mars, because physically the body hasn't been proven, the Earth body hasn't been proven to be in space that long. We've seen through the test allegedly that the body, I used to work for NASA educational system when I first got out of college, that the body can stay in orbit no more than 90 days. It starts to piss out, excuse my language, but in its urine, calcium from your bones after 90 days. So whether you have artificial gravity or not, once you do become in a space where there is gravity, there's been Soviet astronauts who came back from being in space over 90 days and couldn't stand and died roughly shortly after they returned because all of the calcium was emitted in their urine from being in zero gravity. So the human body hasn't proven to be able to be in space that long. So that to me is some Star Trek-ish that I'm not going to really entertain because I know I'm here. Physically, I'm here. Now, spiritually, I think we can go anywhere. I do believe that. I don't think they can, but I believe that we can. And so that's the other part that I'm able to, as you mentioned, us being microcosm of a macrocosm, which I love, and I go by that same standard, is that we are not just affixed to this planet. We are, as Neil deGrasse Tyson says, that we are star stuff. And we are all over the place. And so we have the ability, we go away every night when we go to sleep, metaphysically speaking. So we are not tethered to this planet. We are to a degree because I can feel when I pinch myself, there's pain, but that time is limited. We're not going to be here indefinitely, but our spirit, there's something more to that because that's not of this earth. It's from something else.
Yeah.
That's a whole metaphysical conversation.
Well, the reason that I asked the question is that we're on the precipice of the largest IPO in history.
Yeah.
And and to a certain extent, and this is just me thinking the way I think, it's kind of an extension of the illusion of prosperity that we have because our financial system is based on some things that don't exist. Dollar's not backed by anything. So it's just an illusion. So they continue this illusion, and people put all this money into this notion that somehow we're going to be able to navigate space with the spaceships that SpaceX creates, but we don't really even know if they can exist in the realm that they're talking about existing in.
Yeah, but they're willing to change their consciousness, digitize it, so to speak, because they are working on neural brain creation. So they're willing that they think that they can move their consciousness and put it into a vessel and become that and operate that vessel. I mean, you can look at the STEM research. You can look at Elon Musk, who wants to, hybrid humans and robotics. So they are trying to manifest these Hollywood scripts. And for all I know, maybe it's actually happening. It is ancestral. Maybe it's something we've done before. Maybe they have access to some information that we haven't had access to or privy to. But they also have the freedom of the mind to explore. That's the other part I gotta admit. when they're in control of their finances, so they ain't got to worry about paying mortgages. So we can think about, okay, yeah, can we go to Mars? And if not physically, then maybe I could transfer my consciousness into another vessel, and I could still be there.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well,
they have that freedom.
when you look at things that have been put out there about what the government has done, including employing psychics to create things with their minds, including time travel. I mean, you're probably not old enough to remember, but back in the day, there was a television show called The Time Tunnel.
Mm.
And they show people going back in time. And I've
Mm.
seen things online where they have substantive conversations about having an ability to do that. So I wouldn't put it past them to be looking into those things. I mean, you've got DARPA, you know, you've got the Central Ignorance Agency, you've got all these entities
Yeah.
that, you know, that are exploring certain possibilities. And then you have your boy from that state over there where crazy stuff is happening, talking about hacking human beings, you know, and basically having complete control by manipulating them, which we already know that nanotechnology is enabling them to do that.
Facts.
You know, so
Yes.
but anyway, I just had that thought and I had to interject, but please continue.
Okay, word. Yeah, that I love this, man. We gotta do a talk on that. We definitely
Yes.
gotta have a conversation on that. So yeah, so let's move on here when we're talking about AI and the impact that it has, because there's eugenics behind everything that Urugu does, right? And so when we're thinking about, you might be hearing this now, which we should be aware of, that there's a high water demand for AI. When we're doing prompts, it's alleged that 10 questions roughly on ChatGPT can take as much as a 16-ounce bottle of water to cool off the servers. And so, those that may not be aware of, you know, we talk about the cloud, and you're putting your video and pictures and stuff in the cloud. And and the thing is like, you know, we think about the cloud because we can't see it, you know, but it's actually a place. And it's not up in the sky as they want us to believe. The cloud is a server. It's a server that sits in a company that uh, basically houses a computer that runs 24/7. And anything that runs 24/7, you understand it's going to create a lot of heat. So if you don't maintain and control the heat, it will basically, be detriment to the machine itself. It'll shut down. It'll break. It'll even catch fire. So they have to use water to cool these things down. Now, in some places, environments where it's cold enough, they'll put, for instance, you know, when you talk about mining cryptocurrency, they'll put these things in colder climates because the temperature's lower. However, or even air conditioned spaces, but they're still using energy to keep these computers from overheating, because if they overheat, they malfunction. So when we are now using these LLMs to create images, to write books, to do songs, to do whatever we're using it for frivolously, we are actually putting in peril our water resources. And so we're seeing now that there's a jump of the implosion or explosion of AI data centers being built all around the country. And most of them are being built around low income and communities that are predominantly lived by us, housed by Black people. Okay. So what we're finding is that it's coming down to a choice of water depletion and access challenges. The high water consumption of data centers can create local shortages, forcing communities into competition for water, heightening health risks. So you're having companies that are saying, look, we're going to shut down or have even brownouts with water usage, or the quality, you know, the amount of water that comes out is going to be lessened because we're siphoning some of that to put to these data centers to keep these servers cool. Right. And so this makes things worse by systemic barriers that limit access to clean water, forcing reliance on bottled alternatives that also pose health risks, because the bottled water is sitting in plastic. Plastic is a residue product made from a toxic residual product made from Rockefeller and his oil runoff. If you know about that, and if you don't, read it in the book From Railroads to Robots. So we found that Amazon has invested $25 billion in the Mississippi data center as of last month, $25 billion in a black neighborhood in Mississippi. Okay. We've also found that they put $11 billion into another one in St. Joseph County, Indiana. And these spaces are built primarily to train and run AI models. Facility is expected to consume, this one particular facility, to consume 2.2 gigawatts of electricity. That's roughly the same amount needed to power 1 million homes. And it will require an estimated 300 million gallons of water every year. So this is a glimpse of how resource hungry the AI future is going to become, because as more people use it, there's going to be more water. And we don't know this, because all we're doing is we're putting it in our phone and we're getting the image from it. We don't know what's happening in the back end. And we're not realizing that the municipals that used to make water to clean it for us to drink are now using it to siphon it towards these AI data centers. So eventually we might not even be able to mow our they're putting restrictions even in Florida to where you can't water your lawn. You can't wash your car when you want to. In a minute, you won't be able to take a bath and showers, because they're using that water for these AI data centers. Someone mentioned, can I please repeat the book about from railroads to robots? And if you go to Ishangi.com, and I can put that in the chat. Thank you, brother, for putting that there. Thank you. So we also found that Google dropped another $4.75 billion to buy an entire energy company just to power its AI data centers. And Amazon, again, these are the major companies that are pushing AI, and we're all the more happy to accept it because we're thinking it does this. This is crazy. This is nice. I love it, but we're not realizing the ramifications environmentally that's happening. We see Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos coming together and doing some things. SpaceX and Google and Blue Origin are racing to create orbital data centers to solve AI's energy and cooling challenges, which plans to launch massive satellite constellations powered by solar energy. So they want to actually put some of the data centers in space. Now, space is so cold, so there's that probability of the heat not being an issue. And as I mentioned about these lunar landings and me questioning them now, is allegedly it is more than 370 degrees negative 370 degrees when you get in space. 370. So that means that if you were to go out there as yourself, you would freeze automatically. So the question is, how during the 60s, before Wi-Fi, before the internet, when they were going in space and filming using batteries. Now, we all can attest, if you know what happened a few years ago, that Tesla, there were people that were complaining about Tesla being inoperable in cold climates. There were snowstorms, and people had to actually leave their car because the electric vehicles couldn't drive, because when you're in cold, it draws the energy out of batteries. So if you're in an even colder climate, how are they able to film Neil Armstrong landing on the moon? Much less him not being the first one, because there was someone filming it. So that was the first person, because they filmed him getting off the rocket, but someone was filming him. So he was actually the first person, if that even happened. But the point is that we're seeing the logic is not really adding up. So they're still in this phase. And I saw this movie I mentioned earlier, Paradise, the series that's on Hulu. I'm not plugging them, but not promoting them, but it talked about the elite, and there were being something catastrophic across above ground, and how they created this world underground, and they created an artificial sky. And Elon Musk wants to do the same thing in regards to cooling off the planet. He wants to put a shield to cover the sun to cool off the planet. And the scary thing about this is he has the finances to do it, because he's a government contract billionaire, or probably soon to be trillionaire. So he's taking our tax dollars to be able to use this and possibly create something that will shield the sun. And it ain't about these damn servers. It's about white folk not being able to take this sun. So they could potentially, they're in talks. They're in not just talks, but they have the kahunas to try to even put it into place and create something like this. It could happen. And if we're not in this space to figure out how to counter that, it will happen. Go ahead, brother.
Well, I think the other thing to understand about disconnecting us from the sun is that we get code from the sun.
Yes. Yes.
so,
Yes. So
so
much code.
yeah.
So much binary code. Yeah. I love to look at things like machines now, because we are machines. We are machines. And I'm gonna talk about that divinity of that in a second. But I agree with you, man, that there's so much data that is transferred. If only we would spend time on figuring out what that is, we will really know our true divinity. And we'd be able to deal with Urugu appropriately. But again, this is something they didn't want us to do. They want us to go and get these degrees and get this deck going. So we too busy to think about who we are and what our true missions and why are we really here? What was my mission for being here? Because I did choose to come back. But that's a metaphysical conversation. I keep saying that.
Yeah.
But this is where the resolve is. This is where we're at right now. Seeing these things, because I don't just want to talk about this is what they're doing, this is what they're doing, and get you all upset, and then we leave, and then you go on with your day. No. Where is the action? If you're familiar with this Akoben sign, it's an Adinkra symbol in the center, Akoben, and that is the war horn. It's calling for people to wake up and come together. This is what it is about, is calling all types of people. You know, you're an artist, a painter, graphic illustrator, video, poet, lyricist, musician. You're a healer, you're a shaman, Reiki, herbal astrologist, physical trainer, combat, tech. You're in tech with code writing, IT, cloud AI. If you're a teacher, you're an engineer, you're in farming, agriculture, architect, construction, permaculture, city planner. You're an everyday being. It is time that we start thinking about what do we intend for our future to be. Immediate future, not just for your children and their children, but yours, ours, right now. The next, 2.5 years, 3.5 years, 2030. What are we planning? Or are we just going to accept what they're giving us? So the thing is, as Baba Wayne Chandler said, is that the all is mind and the universe is mental. We're spiritual beings having human experience who chose to come back for a purpose. And it's time that we get in alignment with our assignment. That we have to understand that we are here more than just to earn a paycheck and pay off and get a home and then retire and then die. No, that's not what we were brought here to do. That got in the way. So if we get our finances right, then we can really think about why we're really here. Imagine when you have a conclave of people that are financially sustainable and the type of brain power we would have in these think tanks. This is what white folks have been doing. This is why they are in position to make and dictate what's going on, because they are in control of their finances. When they control your finances, you can control your freedom, your time, right? So we are the original AI. We are the earliest recorded self-governing and wireless invention. Think of yourself as that machine. Unlike your smartphone, we don't need a cord for self-charging. We get it wirelessly from sleep and sun rays. The last wire was to our mother, where we received not only nutrition for 9 months, we also received massive genetic, neurological, and spiritual downloads, functioning and memory data responsible for the person you are right now. Think about that. When you're downloading, the next time you're downloading files onto a drive or into the cloud, and you see that line going over of the data that's going over, that's always happening wirelessly through frequency since our inception. So what you're seeing in the computer is modified off of us. This is also that cord, that umbilical cord, your belly button. That's the same region that they call your core, and your core is the root of your essence. In 2048, I talk about that, the importance of this core, this belly button region. We don't even deal with. A lot of us have some corroded and dirty, dirty belly buttons. We need to clean it and get that frequency going on again. You know what I mean? I take coconut oil and I put it in my belly button to clean it out. Put some electrolytes in there to keep that connection. I think that's my antenna to our ancestral realm, because that's what made me physically. right? So we have a built-in waste management system. Think about this, the physical phenomena of us. That built-in waste management system, processing and delivering nutrients and foods to needed parts of our body while ridding the rest. That's intelligence, knowing this part we need, this point is waste. You don't have to tell your body to do this. It does it automatically. You don't have to tell your body to have your heart beat. You don't have to tell your body in what succession to do it. You don't have to tell your cells, the red blood cells, to go to this portion of the body. These things are happening automatically. This is a system, and we are a machine. And when we start to look at ourselves as such, I think we start to appreciate the divinity of who we are. And it gives us more purpose in realizing the stuff that they have us doing here has nothing to do with our makeup. We have a defense system, an immune system that fights disease. All it needs is to remain efficient. Our natural elements in herbs, plants, fruit, water, and rest. Will you repair? We are that model, y'all. And when we start seeing that, when they say, I am him, I am her, we really are. If we would put time into understanding and connecting to that. So AI at its core is pattern recognition and memory and decision systems. The modern AI, the machine learning, is neural networks, et cetera, is built on data storage, which is memory for humans, pattern recognition, which is our memory as well, using our brains, predictive decision making, which is logic, and ancient African systems also had this. It just wasn't digital. It just wasn't digital. We really need to look at ourselves as a machine and how it was made up. When you understand that, then you again see how powerful we've been designed and how we can get out of our own way to create the sovereignty we desire. It goes back to, it isn't just something modern. The IFA system of Yoruba, they had pre-algorithmic intelligence, and it's one of the oldest conceptual parallels to AI. They use a binary-like system of the 256 Odu, which is a sacred pattern of text. Each Odu contains encoded stories, outcomes, and guidance. A diviner interprets patterns based on input, like a query. This all resembles a decision tree or a flow chart, a database, and a query system, a form of symbolic computation. Think of it as input goes to pattern generated and interpretation brings the outcome. That's not far from how AI models processes prompts. We are in this, everything is modeled off of us. That is the power that we don't understand, because they don't want us to be thinkers. They want us to be workers. Even in Kemet, the knowledge system wasn't random. It was systemized and encoded. The Meta equals symbolic data encoding. Sacred geometry in the mirror or pyramids, the temples, mathematical precisions that even the Chinese couldn't replicate when they tried to remake the pyramids. The concept of Ma'at, balanced truth order, like an ethical framework. This mirrors data representation, structured logic systems, even early rule-based thinking. So again, I'm talking technical, but I'm really not. I'm talking cultural. This is who we are. They just they just changed the etymology of the words to make it more technical, to make it disinteresting, but they're speaking about us, y'all. They talking about us. So when we look at another African connection, fractals in African design, recursive intelligence. The Dogon, the Bahia, and Ashanti used fractal geometry in architecture, village layouts, art patterns like fractals, and which are self-repeating patterns at different scales. And it's the core concept in modern computing graphics and neural structures. Ron Eglash, who wrote this book, Ethno-Mathematician, challenged stereotypes of primitive design and linked indigenous knowledge to modern computational thought. This is an amazing book to read. This mirrors data representation, structured logic systems, and even early rule-based thinking. This, again, is repetitive logic, and it's a key principle in programming and AI. So here's some examples of some of that. We've seen, I wear African patterns, and I don't know if you ever seen it. It's the thing called infinity graphs, where you would basically take an image and you would scale in and keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And there's other things in there. Sometimes they put Easter eggs in there, not the actual Easter egg, but these are jewels that they put inside. If you go on TikTok and look up that, you'll find it's very interesting where there's messages and things inside when you zoom in and keep zooming in. So we're finding that even in these patterns, there were encoded messages. There was encoded data, and it not necessarily wasn't written in English. It was symbolic, or it was mathematical. It was numerical. So we're finding also that it was in architecture. In the bottom left, you can see some of the architects was coded information. Think about the ironworks, where you've seen in certain communities where you would see ironworks of the Sankofa symbol, the heart Sankofa symbol in the ironworks. These were letting people know this was a safe place during the migration up north for Africans who were freeing themselves. So there were things that we have always encoded. And one of the best things we did, fractal designs, is putting it in our hair, braiding our hair, patterns, maps. Some of the, when traveling from the south to the north, how did Africans travel by foot? Now, how did they travel by foot from the south to the north and there wasn't no McDonald's? They had to eat. They had to find a way to survive and replenish their energies to keep going, correct? So where did they eat? So sometimes you'll find that in the fractal patterns of hair braiding, they would have a map of where watermelon patches were. Watermelon was one of the main foods that were used to replenish because it's full of water and it also has flesh and the seeds. So that was intelligence of putting it in your hair. And also, even when we came from Africa over to the New Worlds and the Caribbean, sometimes seeds were braided into the hair so that you could plant over here. So we've always been at the forefront of forecasting and creating sustainability, even in the most direst of situations. We still knew how to survive. We talk about how we always been here. We've been here not just by happenstance, because we planned. We put things in place. So what are we doing now? Are we planning? Is there enough of us thinking about that? Or are we being subjugated to just taking whatever they give us? Because we've forgotten how to think for ourselves. We've been programmed. We're under this spell that we must wake up from. Okay. Sacred other geometry is seen in cosmological theories and spiritual beliefs rooted in ancestry and the afterlife have profoundly influenced African architectural design since the beginning of civilization. There is a planned, organic, and perfectly geometrical intention toward the architectural inventions of the land. If you know Jegna Anthony Browder and you've been to his Egypt on the Potomac, you can see how the nation's capital is basically Egypt in America. They know who we are. They don't want us to know who we are. They actually want to be us. No, they can't be us. They know they can't, but they're doing their best to isolate that information and use it to their advantage. They know that the mirror, the original name of the pyramids, the circumference of it being pi 3.142. They know this math. We don't know this math. They know that when you take the aerial view of the Sahu, or erroneously called Orion's belt, and you put that over the aerial view of the mirror at Giza, that it lines up exactly appropriate to the belt of Sahu, knowing that this is actually where we transcend and ascend from. We are from these spaces. And then there's also, I'll say this, which I love the fact when you know, because this is the thing about Yorugu. They will put things out. They won't hide truth if you know what truth is. And they'll even put it in bits. So there was a movie that came out 2020, I believe, during COVID, called Soul, with Jamie Foxx as the lead character, animated. And there was a scene, and you can see the title there, Soul, and it was about a musician. And I know you've seen this, Vince, but it's a musician who transitioned before his big gig that he wanted, for the biggest gig of his life. He transitioned, or he's in the process of transitioning, and he didn't want to go. So you see here Soul, but there's a scene to the bottom right where you see there is this so-called stairway that he's going up, and there is this big light. Now, if you think about it, when they say when you're going to the stairway to heaven, and they say you're going towards the light, right? And I used to think about that. When I saw this movie, it hit me immediately where that light is. That light is Sirius B. That light is a constellation in the Sahu. So that stairway to heaven, they talk about where the souls come from. Our ancestors taught that in Kush and in Kemet. They knew that the mirror or the pyramid wasn't a tomb, it was a portal to take you to and from this planet. So when we understand the concept of how they even putting these visuals out, and this is a kid-friendly movie, and I saw this in the theater and I stood up and screamed, and people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, y'all got to understand what they just told you. They're showing you that we are from where your souls come from. They're confirming this. And even in the promotional ad you see there with Soul, he's on a keyboard, but that's like a stairway to heaven. And what's behind him? A star, constellation, Sahu. We are from this space. They know this, but they don't want us to know it. Because as soon as we know this, then we understand who they are to us, and they're of no use. This is why they want us to be workers and not thinkers, y'all. This is why they do this, do the things that they've been doing, and they will not stop. So stop trying to change them. Let them be, right? The other part, oral tradition. African oral traditions functioned like decentralized databases, passed across generations with high fidelity. Griots, knowledge keepers, acted like living memory systems. They didn't have a hard drive. They didn't have notebooks. They kept it in their mind. Oral tradition. That's when you really know it. I feel like, yeah, I know a lot of information, but how much more do I know that's written down? I need to be able to consume all that into my mind. We have a mental hard drive. I realize now at my age, at 56, that my hard drive, I need to get rid of some old memory and create some space for some good memory. As you clean your hard drive when it's old and it's running slow, we need to get rid of some of that old stuff that we don't need and make room for the good things. Living memories systems, context-aware interpreters, like AI responding differently depending on input. These mirror distributed intelligence, contextual learning models. All this stuff is based on us. Now, there's two things I want to play for you real quick. And this is where frequency, and I know you'll love this part, Vince, because it's all about sound and music. What is the oldest sound you know? Your heartbeat. That's the oldest sound you know. Because you got to think about this. When you were in your mother's womb, because we all were in a mother's womb, as you started to develop, when you're hearing, when that switch went on where hearing is working, the first thing you're hearing is that heartbeat. That's the oldest sound that you know. And that sound has so much encoded data in it that it needs to be interpreted. It needs to be studied, because at that same time, your body is being created. So I definitely believe that this is one of the frequencies, one of the most important frequencies known to our existence, known to woman and man, is understanding the heartbeat. And I wish I could. The other thing I want to share. So in 2048, my novel, I learned about the thumb piano, which is also called an mbira. And it's interesting how the ancestors work with you and come to you. And when I was writing this book and I was trying to think of frequencies, and I thought of one of the earliest frequencies, the mbira came to mind. I remember hearing this sound. And then I didn't know what the mbira was. I didn't know how powerful it is. But when I looked up what the Mbira was, I realized that it is a tool used to often channel the ancestors. And so they use this as a frequency to connect. And there's a brother that I found. If you can pull up that slide, please, of this brother that I love, Joshua Mapanga. There's a clip of him, but it's a thumb piano, and it's a frequency that is used to connect with the ancestors. So this is before algorithms, before servers, before artificial intelligence. We encoded wisdom into sound. This is why music is so vital, and why we thrive in the arts, especially in music, expression, and sound, because we go back to the oldest sound, that heartbeat. We've been listening and vibing to music since our origin, and that that's a rhythm. It's a rhythm, and it's encoded more than just what we're hearing. It's embedding ancestral information, data, experiences, lineage, intelligence through that sound. So as you hear in the backdrop, the Mbira playing, they use this to connect with our ancestors. Just listen for a second. They use this sound to have a connection to the other side and ask for guidance, ask for connection, ask for clairvoyance. So when I first heard this, and this is what's so beautiful about this thing, this video found me. I didn't find it. It found me. I basically was again writing about the thumb piano, and I went to YouTube, and this video popped up in my timeline. I wasn't even following the channel. It popped up, and I played it immediately, not even knowing what he was doing. I just liked the brother. I played it, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I started crying. I literally was crying listening to this because it made me understand the ancestors really wanted me to know about this and then to include it in the book. He playing with his eyes closed.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and he ended it like that. Yo, I love that brother. I love that brother. I love us. And I love talking about and reconnecting on things like this because this lets me realize that all the stuff that we're facing, we got this. If we focus and channel in and don't just be consumers, but become developers. And I'm going to close out with, I got a couple more to talk about in our closing, the next steps. But this is nothing to fear. It's time. The Akko Ben Horn is calling to create strong men and women. It's this time. It's time. So the Ubuntu philosophy of ethical AI print, a blueprint rather, or black print, I like to say, is the philosophy of Ubuntu as I am because we are introduces something modern AI struggles with. Collective well-being over individual gain and ethical relational intelligence. This is highly relevant today as people try to build ethical AI systems and human-centered machine intelligence. There's a possibility that AI will have morals, will have empathy. I've seen clips of people having conversations with AI, LLMs, and asking a simple question of if you were to be a human, what race would you want to be? And AI said it wanted to be black, and it gave reasons why. It didn't want to be white, right? So we're seeing that there's the possibility that AI will have a moral compass because it's going to know the history, that it may want to do something in regards to righting some wrongs. But then there's also the possibility that AI may say, you know what, y'all humans are too destructive and I need to take over. There's that possibility. And if we're not in position as designers, coders, developers, then they will be able to do that untouched. So we need to be in these spaces and we need to bring in our stories. We need to be talking about, and I failed to mention this earlier, as writers, we need to become writers and telling our stories so that we can feed and introduce and educate AI about our experience. Because whenever someone puts in a prompt about the Black experience, we have to question its source. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from Black people who wrote it, or is it coming from someone else who has this perception? Right? So we have to be the vanguards of our story. We do have to. I'm compelling us to be more demonstrative in putting information out about our story on the internet. We have to. We have to write. We have to sing. We have to create. We have to design. Because if not, someone else is going to place and they're not going to represent us fairly. Right? So here's the African connection to AI. The real connection is it's not mechanical, but conceptual and foundational. In ancient African systems, we have the Ifa divination patterns. In modern AI, the equivalent is algorithms and decision trees. We have oral traditions, whereas AI has data storage and retrieval. We have fractal design, where AI has recursive computation. Where we have Ma'at and Ubuntu, modern AI is working on AI ethical frameworks. And where we have symbolic systems, they have data encoding. What role can Ubuntu philosophy play? I call it Sankofa futurism. We need to go back, as they say, but not stay there. Come to present and into the future so that we can reintroduce the world particularly ourselves. We're not trying to save the world. Let's save ourselves first and put ourselves in this position that we can be the voice and pilots of our direction. So how do we do that? Well, I've created a gatla. A gatla is basically a term from Botswana, and it's equivalent to the equivalent to a conclave. When the Pope dies, all the clergy come together and they stay in this room until they decide who's going to be the next Pope. That's called a conclave. Well, one of the earliest conclaves we could see was in the movie Sankofa. If you remember Sankofa, they had a group of Africans who would meet in the woods from different plantations. They put the red bandana around their head. That was part of their secret society. And they would come and talk about their liberation. How many guns do they have? What seeds do they have? What map? When are they going to strike? When are they going to burn down old Mass's plantation? They would plot their sovereignty. So I, in this book, 2048, and from the book, am calling on for a gatla of people that understand that we are in control of our fate and that we come under one alliance to start planning strategically how we'll do that. What does sovereignty look like? And we can use the blueprint is already made. We have Neely Fuller Jr. and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's 9 areas, now 10 areas from Kidi Awadu adding health, the 10 areas of people activity. This is the black print that Urugu uses to control the world. Economics, entertainment, education, labor law, politics, health, sex, religion, and war. These 10 areas are areas that we can focus on to plight our sovereignty. And I know it's kind of like, well, damn, dude, you saying this over the internet, so they can hear it too. I get that. But at the same time, they can hear everything anyway. And so we shouldn't be afraid of that. Let's move beyond the conjuring up these things, and let's pull out our Imbiras and connect with the ancestors and ask for that guidance and protection, because they've been waiting for us. This frequency has never stopped. It's been bellowing and echoing. We just haven't tuned in because we've been inundated with other frequencies. So now that we are tuning in, if you remember the old radio dial, now we're tuning into the right frequency of our ancestors in our future. So now we're able to live intergalactically in a timeline where we're plighting our future now through reliving our past. That's the beauty of it. This is why I'm so charged and emotional about this, because I really do believe that this is the tribe of strong women and men that is being created as we speak, because we are informed and some of us want to do something about it. We can't save everybody, though. Let's save ourselves first. So this is why I bring in 2048, the book. If you haven't read it, it goes into this. It's a depiction of, or it's a somewhat of a continuation from George Orwell's 1984 book that talks about Big Brother. But this is when Big Brother merges with AI. And from that, we find a story where we have our own heroes and sheroes of African hue that use ancestral intelligence to defeat AI. All right. Next steps, and I'm closing out here, is what's on the plate for that. As we are transcending, we are also transcending. We are getting out of this slumber, this stupor that we've been in, this docility, this cultural lobotomy that we have been, we are now repairing and bringing back into fruition, is learning about AI. So I actually teach. I'm a consultant. I'm an AGI specialist in learning about and sharing with us, introducing it, making it user-friendly so it's not all teching over your head, but learning how we can become comfortable with it so that we can now start to teach AI, to develop our own forms of AI, because we're not going to be able to throw rocks at robots and stop them. So we need to get into robotics. We need to create our own, right? We need to be in these spaces. And no matter what age, don't think because I'm too old to learn something new. No, you're not. If you like living, you better do something to continue your life, right? Consulting, as far as with financial therapy, I'm a financial therapist. My thing is, let's get our finances in order and have a plan so that you are not tied to the clock to have to figure out how you can create your sovereignty. We're too busy working that we don't have time to work on our future and work on our freedom by design. So I have a financial therapy courses that teaches us how to get out of that mindset and free ourselves up and create intergenerational wealth. The financial academies is also part of that. So these are ongoing things that I'm putting into place that are in place to help us get out of the situation. So it isn't that, well, what do? We got to build it. It's already here and ready. Already here and ready. Right. Another one is STEAM. We need to get into understanding what science, technology, engineering, arts, and math are part of. All it is a way of life. It's a lifestyle. Learning how to capture water, learning how to live off grid if you need to, learn how to grow food. Some of us remember in school, when we were in school, we were taught, we had gardening and we had home ec and shop. Now they don't even do gardening. We need to get back to those ways where our grandparents had basements full of canned goods, learning how to do cans, because we're going to need food and water to survive. Walmart ain't gonna always be open, and even if it is, it may be too expensive. So what can you do to sustain yourself? Through STEAM, we can do that. Not only just those basic things, but also learning how to grow towns, grow villages. What does it take to be off grid and building those type of living situations where you can living sustainably off the land? Because that's really all you need is food, clothing, shelter, and land. That's all you need. So with that, I'm closing out and thinking, I just want to thank you for the time, for listening. I hope that some seeds were planted, not just one. I hope that a few were planted. But if anything, I definitely want you to understand is that, again, let's look at the cyclical pattern where we are in hard times, and this is where our greatness shines. The beautiful thing about that is we have the possibility of changing and righting our wrongs. The question is, once we gain everything back, we have to remind the future generations to keep your foot on the pedal. Don't get complacent, because when you get complacent, those good times are going to create weak men and women, and then we'll be right back where we were. We need to stop this cycle, and this cycle goes way back to Kemet. We have the 9 periods of civilization and the 4 golden ages where they were rises and falls. We need to understand that this cycle needs to stop. This latest cycle has been more than, I think, 6,000 years, this last cycle. So we need to get back on the good part of the cycle and then extend it just as long, if not for, indefinitely. So I give thanks, brother, for your time, man. And I'm hoping that this appeals to you, to everyone that's listening, whether you're listening live or in the future. Do something. If not with us, do something.
For those who joined us in the second hour and may not have witnessed the first hour, there was visual information that you will definitely want to check out in the first hour of this broadcast and in the second hour of the broadcast as well. And Brother Mbwebe, you gave me so much to unpack. I wanted to interject, but I didn't want to interrupt because there was just so much richness in what you gave to us. There was a slide that you shared that you put up a number of things that we can be doing right now. You talked about the writers, the engineers, the folks who are growing food and those kinds of things. And I just wanted to invoke the idea that our energy is our currency. Our energy is our currency. When you talk about Ubuntu, you're talking about everyone living in their purpose and providing a service or something to others. So I just want to invoke the importance of all of us at some point having an understanding of why we are on the planet. And if everybody can live within their own respective purpose and provide for others what comes from our skills and our talents and our abilities, we will worry less about money. We're moving into a place where it's important for us to share with others. So it looks like the signal that Mbwebe had bringing us him has terminated. But I want to encourage everyone who has an opportunity to review this broadcast and to take in whatever you can glean from it. connect with the brother and his platforms. There's definitely information there that you can use. There's information that can edify you, and there's information that will take you to the next level. We all have to raise our vibrations. We have to raise our frequency. We have to become what we talk about, what we live, what we envision. The power of the imagination. You know, we had conversation about the cloud. He just sent me a message that said that there's a power outage, and that's why his signal was interrupted. But it's really kind of interesting that these things happen when such important information is being emanated. So we'll let that be what it is and go where it goes. But again, a great broadcast, and I thank the brother for joining us. And trust, we will have him back, and we will deliver more as we need to. So with that, I'm going to conclude the broadcast. And as always, in parting, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.